Hey there, Dr. Vern Weisberg, here to talk to you today on my podcast, episode number 2, the Rule of 72. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you haven't. I hadn't for a while, but when I did, it put things together for me. It was attributed to, or commonly is attributed to, Albert Einstein, who apparently it's reported said it was the eighth wonder of the world in mathematics, but seemed pretty simple. And whenever I hear things like that, I try to do a little more research. And in fact, it wasn't too hard to discover that that was probably not Einstein, but about 400 years before Einstein's birth, there was an Italian friar, Luca Pacioli, who in 1494 published a book, Summa di Aritmetica, Geometria, Proporzioni e Proporzionalità, a guide to arithmetic, algebra, geometry, accounting, and weights and measures. So anyhow, that's a little aside because I like to pick these things apart, but we've all heard about the power of compound interest. I mean, we learn it in school. And when I was a kid, we had something called the Christmas Club or the Hanukkah Club. But anyhow, you'd go and dutifully put money in, and you knew that with compound interest, it would continue to grow. So basically, by putting some money in, you'd get some interest that would add to the base that would then get interest on that new number. And that seemed pretty exciting, but it was, seemed like very small numbers, and I wasn't sure, ever how that was going to work out in the real world. I thought I had understood this pretty well, but it became very obvious to me when I was watching Tony Robbins illustrate it with something he called the simple game of golf. It proposed a 10-cent bet on the first hole, and doubling this bet for every one of the subsequent 17 holes. Obviously, this isn't really practical in the world of golf betting if you do that, but for this purpose, we just assume that nobody wins and it's carried over from one hole to the next, doubling on each hole. Just 10 cents seems like not much. And the first few holes, it's pretty small. 10 cents becomes 20 cents, becomes 40 cents, and you can see how that goes. And, in fact, by the 9th hole, halfway through, it really only gets to 25.60. Pretty manageable. No big deal, $25.60, $30, to lose. That's not much. And so you keep going, right? But here's where it starts to get fun. By the 11th hole, you're at $102.40, which starts to get a little meaningful, gets your attention. By the 14th hole, maybe you start to break a sweat because now the number is $819.20. So you can imagine those putts are starting to look pretty long because nobody's won. And if you don't win, you're going to be the person paying out. But only 4 more holes left, so how bad could that get? Well, by the 18th hole, the last one, what do you imagine that number would be? It is $13,107.20, starting just with 10 cents a hole, doubling. 10 cents on the first hole. Of course, you can say, well, that's pretty cool, but I don't think I could double my money every year. So how long does it take you to double your money? Well, that's where this rule of 72 comes in. You divide the annual rate of return by 72 to approximate how many years it takes for money to double. So for example, for this example, and I think this is a good one, you're 29 years old and you have $10,000 that you put in the bank. And let's say that you are lucky enough to get 1% interest at your bank. I don't know, what does your bank pay right now? How long will it take to double your money? Well, 72 divided by 1 is 72 years. So by the ripe age of only 101, you will have doubled your money, and you'll have $20,000 for your initial $10,000 investment. Starts to make you think about where your money should be. At 4% interest, it doubles every 18 years. So by the age of 65, if you'd done nothing else with the $10,000, you'd have $40,000. So that's not too bad. Now, at 10% interest, we're talking about doubling every 7.2 years. So at that point, at age 65, from only that original $10,000, you would have grown it to $320,000. That's not a bad thing. That's pretty darn good, you know. Just put 10,000 in when you're 29. At age 65, you got 320. Pretty good. But imagine you're patient and you wait another 7 years. So you're age 72. Well, that's the real powerful part. You've doubled that. So you now have $640,000 just by waiting another 7 years. Now that's what I call a pretty good deal. Now, I know you're probably saying, I don't know where to get 10% interest, but that's a talk for another day. But that's really pretty cool. Now, the dark side of that is that this rule of 72 also applies to your debt. So that's pretty scary. Imagine you carry $10,000 of credit card debt at, say, at 10%. That's all. You already know what those numbers would be. But some of us have credit cards that charge a heck of a lot more than 10%. So that could be really damaging to your growing wealth. So we'd like to suggest that maybe you work really hard on reducing those high interest loans. And I would say start with the highest interest loans. But anyhow, that also is a talk for another day. So basically, this rule of 72, very powerful, great way for me to have understood the concept of compound interest and how long it actually takes to double your money, so that you can realize that the higher your ROI, your return on investment, using this rule of 72, you can create wealth in a very leveraged and exponential way. So I hope that's been helpful to you. Looking forward to more of these. And again, this is podcast number 2. See you soon.